So you're writing a story. Could be a novel, could be a short story, could be a screenplay, could be a D&D campaign, could be a video game, could be whatever. But you want your characters to be believable and relatable to the audiences. Well, the first thing when we meet someone is we introduce ourselves, we give our names. That might not be the first thing you introduce your character with, but when we see on the big screen and the silver screen and the leading man says the name's Bond, James Bond, that sticks with us. James Bond tells us something about that character. And in writing fiction, we have to come up with names for all of our characters. And it can be really hard. So today I want to talk about naming fictional characters. So naming fictional characters has a lot of pitfalls. A lot of pitfalls. It's a lot harder to do than you might think. The great Isaac Asimov, who is beyond reproach in his writing skill, really far be it from me to complain about anything Isaac Asimov has ever done, except, I gotta say, he's not that great at coming up with names. If you read the Foundation series, a lot of the names, Harry Seldon, Selver Hardin, Hober Mallow, it's two syllables, accent on first, then the second, two syllables, accent on first, then the second. They're very Western, consonant, vowel, consonant. They're kind of uninspired names. They sound like regular people names, but they sound very repetitive, especially for a series as big and expansive as Foundation that takes place over tens of thousands of years across an entire galaxy. You're really going to tell me everyone's name sounds almost the exact same? So, and I'm being, I'm exaggerating my complaint a little bit. But to give you that as an example of fantastic stories and fantastic authors who might have struggled with coming up with names that sound diverse. You might not always want your names to sound diverse. You might want to have some continuity with names. If you have characters in your story that are four brothers named Flanders, Xanders, Wanders, and Vanders, that tells you there's some continuity between them, that the family or clan or their mother or whoever named them put them in some kind of order. If you have someone who's named junior, senior, the third, that tells you something about them. So the name, you might not want to have names that are diverse. You might want to have continuity within your names. If you do, I would suggest using that continuity within the names to signal to your readerships in group versus out group, these people are alike each other, and I can signify that they come from the same region, they come from the same planet, they come from the same clan or tribe because there is some similarity in their names. On that note, our names in at least Western languages, I limit myself to English and try and minimize the butchery of just that language. The names that we find have a couple of common origins, which are fun to think about. And once we have made them explicit, then it can make it easier for us to name our fictional characters. So the first common origin for names is a patronym, right? Patronym meaning patra from your father, name. So my last name, Anderson, would be a historical patronym. My dad was not named Anders, but something like Leif Erikson, Leif, son of Eric. That would be a patronym. Now, over time, that patronym just got handed down. So Erikson becomes the sort of familial surname that gets handed down throughout generations. Named after a father, there's also matronyms. You could be named after a mother. Some cultures do that. Kind of a neat one. A similar naming convention that I will lump very closely with that is clan and tribe names. So if you have characters that are from a place that have lots of small sort of clans, you might want to have some designator of clan membership as part of their name or title. Now, names and titles are almost interchangeable in some parts throughout history, throughout our own history, and can be more interchangeable in your characters. It might seem silly for us to think that a title like captain or doctor or reverend or mister or junior is something that is just the same as a name that was given. A name seems more permanent in a lot of our minds, and a title seems like something that we earned. But if you have a title that's clan membership, you can't get rid of that. That's part of what you're called. Um, so the interchangeability of title and name is important. Clan membership, I'm going to put very close to those familial origins of names. A little bit larger than just your direct family, right? Instead of being named after son of Anders, you're being named after this slightly larger, not quite nuclear family group, this clan or tribe. It's a great way to add in-group, out-group identifiers to your characters and factions. Other ways that we name people that we can make explicit: jobs, right? So Cooper, you know, named after someone who made barrels, or Miller, or Smith. Those are names because there was a guy, you know, named Brad, and he made barrels, so we call him Bradley Cooper, right? And that's an easy thing for a village to say. Yeah, which Brad? The Cooper Brad the Cooper, Bradley Cooper. That's what he does. He's a Cooper. So jobs are a good one for name origins. Locations. Locations, if you are from a far off land, oftentimes that gets sort of in the realm of titles. If you are, you know, Eric the Swede, and you have immigrated to Alabama and everyone knows you as Eric the Swede, then Swede might end up being your surname, depending on how the social rules of your fictional world work. Names can also be descriptive. You know, Robin Hood's friend was Little John, whether he was John Little. What is little in that sense? Is he talking about the person's stature? Eric the Red, you know, the red hair that he had, one of the characters from antiquity, Ahenobarbus, meaning Redbeard. Blackbeard the pirate. These are names that are descriptive. Blackbeard's name was Edward Teach. Blackbeard's a cooler name. And when you go, who's that guy over there? That's the pirate Blackbeard. That is a descriptive name that can stick with someone and be a name that's just as powerful or more powerful as their given name, or the name that was given to them by their parents. So there's lots of ways that we come about names in our own language, in our own societies. And once we make those explicit, it's easy for us to use those to come up with names for our fictional characters. So don't be afraid to name your fictional character something like Bradley the Cooper, Bradley the Barrel Maker, you know, Bradley from Sweden, Bradley the guy with red hair, Bradley the son of Anders. They can be names that have a structure that's not tremendously familiar with us. If you are struggling with names, I would, it's a good thing to keep a list of interesting names. Get a baby names book, flip through it. You don't need to take whole names. You can take chunks. You can put names together, hyphenates, take pieces of words and put them together. Keep a list of good sort of character names. And then have other people read them and see what they sound like when you hand them to your brother, sister, wife, husband, mother, whoever, and say, would you please pronounce this word for me? Because I bet you a lot of the people, if you read Harry Potter first, might have seen Hermione Granger 100 times on the page before you ever watched the movie and went, Hermione. Of course it's Hermione, right? So not that that matters. It's fine to, if you mispronounce a word because you've only read it, it just means you're a literate person and you're learning things by reading it. If that matters to you, or you want someone to have in their head when their internal narrative says the name of your character, if you want it to be said in a certain way, sometimes that can imply some gravitas or some meekness or some romance or whatever it's implying, whatever you want that to sound like in their head, make sure you hand that name to a lot of people and say, would you please pronounce this for me? I just want to verify that the way that you would pronounce this is the way that I would pronounce this. The character in the king in the movie 300, This is Sparta, they pronounced it Leonidas throughout the movie. I have heard scholars pronounce it Leonidas. Which is it? I mean, would it have been just as cool of a movie if instead of Leonidas it was Leonidas? Maybe, yeah, sure. But it does hit the ear a little bit different, one versus the other. So something to think about. Um, the last one that I would say, if you are really struggling with names, open up your baby book or your book of baby names. Open up your spreadsheet where you have a bunch of names, and even just take chunks of names, little bits of words, break them apart, and then add them together, sort of randomize them. You could almost even write them on little ticker tape and put them in a hat and pull things out. So taking 3 or 4 letter bits of words that work together that stand alone and squishing 2 or 3 together and then kind of rearranging them like magnetic fridge poetry can come up with some interesting sounding words, because it's very difficult sometimes for our brains to come up with a totally unique sounding name or word that doesn't sound like the same kind of names that we're familiar with, which is why we get baby name trends. Everyone's named Jaden or Hayden or Caden, or you kind of go like, well, what should we name our boy in the year 2010? And it's like some variant of these names that we're familiar with and we hear and we know as names. If you want something different than that, you have to go someplace other than your own imagination to find that. And one of the ways to do that is taking little bits of words and randomizing them. So take names, break them apart into little chunks, slide those pieces around on the page, take 10 or 12 or 15 or 30 of them, and slide them around and try and pronounce them until you get some that sound interesting or suit your character in an appropriate way. What are some of your favorite unexpected fictional character names? What are some names you've named your fictional characters? What are some names of fictional characters that you heard and you went, that's what you named them? Come on. Share in the comments below. I love to hear that kind of stuff, because the more we drive this conversation, the better writers we all will be. Thank you guys very much.